Namaste. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome. I am so excited for today, and I have been wanting and waiting for some kind of forum on the Marielle. And it's my absolute pleasure today to host Chris and Natalie for this discussion. And just in case you're not aware, the three of us all have had special features on our channels to do with the Marielle Tarot. And that's why I invited Chris and Natalie. And I'm sure there's a bunch of you out there that are experts in this deck and have been working with it for years and years and years. But these are the two that came to mind that I've been watching and following all of their special videos and features. And so that's why the three of us have gathered here today. So hello to Chris. Welcome.
Hi, Sadhana. Thank
And
you very
Natalie.
much.
Yeah. I have prepared 9 questions, and they are in the description box below. And yesterday I decided that I was going to assign a tag to it. So if any of you who are watching live today or in the playback would like to respond to those 9 questions, I'll be sure to check out that tag and we can carry on this discussion from there. So yeah, and I believe one of those questions, Natalie and Chris, I didn't send to you until last night, but I'm sure you can answer on the fly if and when we get to all of those. So yeah. So before we say hi to everybody in the chat, Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about when your journey with the Marielle started and why you decided to do the study group?
So I got the Marielle maybe in about 2017, maybe a year or two before that. And the reason that I started the stud, to be honest, I didn't go near it for quite some time. I found it intimidating because it was too different from the systems that I'm used to, and I found the book quite at times quite difficult to. It's not something I feel that you can just pick up and have a quick glance at, and there you go. You've got where she's going with it. You know, you've really got to like study it in depth. I've found to really get to grips with where she's going with each card, and that takes me nicely into why I started my study group because I, I I felt like we need resource on it, you know, like with every other deck, not every other deck, but like think of the Smith Way and think of all the expansive books that we've got on the Smith Way, and the Smith Way is like not the hardest deck to understand, you know. Like there's depth and complexity to it, but like you can read with it and you can grasp it quite quickly. I feel the Marielle is a different kettle of fish. So I thought we need to have that expanse of resource on the Marielle. And at the time, the main things that I had found, certainly back as far as like 2017, was Sacred Seed, her videos on the miners. And I'm not even sure if there was a whole lot more than that at the time. So I thought, right, let's do this. Let's put something together that like comprehensively breaks it down and put the resource out there. So that was the inspiration for it.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, Natalie, you've been doing videos. Did you start your series with Wasima's invitation?
I did, yeah. Yeah, she did like a tarot marathon back at the end of 2019 that was, I can't even remember the name of it now, but it was basically like putting intentions forward for 2020. And yeah, I was asked, to cover that topic because I'd made several videos about it beforehand. And it was the deck that I had worked with really in depth through all of 2018. And from that particular live, a lot of people had said, could you do a series on it? So I decided to go ahead and start one. And then I became so, I don't know, just I wasn't myself, and I was really struggling during the initial start of the pandemic. And so I kind of lost where I was going with it. And then this year it felt like it was the right time to pick it back up and start again.
That's
But it's the
great.
deck I work with the most and use the most all the time. So
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, and I started a study group as well too, and it's not they're not public videos on my channel. I started a members feature on my channel this year or last year, and we've had some really in-depth discussions. It's been for me a deck that has literally I want to say taken me to my knees or brought me to tears so many times. The deep, deep level of connections. And I'll share with you the first card as well too. That the first question that we're going to do today, I'll just put that banner up and people can think about it while we say hi to everybody. But it's just been such a powerful deck in my life, and I really wanted to take a deeper dive into it. So yeah, I want to. So Elle at Sacred Seed, I love her her mannerisms and the way she talked about that. So yeah, I linked those in my videos, and Chris, I've seen some of your Thursday groups, and Natalie, your videos as well too. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion today, and I know there will be lots of other questions as well too. So we'll try to get to as many as we can in the chat. But I'm gonna direct our conversation today based on these 9 questions. So before we get started, let's just say hi to everybody who's here, because there's a whole whack of people here. Hello to Kristen. I'm going to go up to the top. Kristen, how you there? Hannah, lovely to have you here. Apaja, welcome. And Tammy Ann. Julianne Victoria is with us. Welcome. Leanda. Everybody, we're kind of got a good group from all over the planet. Joel. Every continent seems to be. Dory, hello, Dory. Dory, are you in Australia? I'm just trying to figure out where Dory is from. And who else is here? Vintage Moon, hello and welcome. Nina, nice to have you back. Donna. So start thinking about this first question. If you want to write in the chat, what is the card that drew you in? Lydianne is here and Evangelina. Welcome, everybody. Dee. Maria. Kristen, what are you saying here? I trimmed the first edition, swapped it, then rebought the second edition. I hadn't been ready for it. I'm sure that is a similar experience with a lot of people, not being ready and then coming back to it after a period of time. It's definitely not an easy deck to work with. Hello, Justin Michael. Okay, where are we here? Donna Thompson is here as well too. And as people come in, please know that if I don't greet you, it's just wonderful to have you all here. Maria misses Sacred Seed. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us do too. Hi, Tammy Pie, welcome. And Gabs Gable, welcome. I heard that there was, this is the way of a lot of people on. Did you hear Carrie Mallon talking on Instagram? Anybody? She's left Instagram. So sometimes what happens is people's channels get slammed with trolls, with false identification and all kinds of things. And I think that's why Elle left way back when. And that's recently what's happened to Carrie. So Carrie's left Instagram. Carrie Mallon is the what do you call it?
The Spacious Tarot.
Spacious, yeah. Temple Tarot, hello.
Instagram is terrible for people copying people's, cloning people's profiles.
Yeah.
It's all you see is watch out for this, it's a fake kind of a thing. That's if you're not the one discovering it, with a good old message of, is there anything I can do for you? Can I give you a wee reading? I'm like, I literally got 120 tarot decks behind me. I don't think I need you to give me a reading for however many hundred. Thanks.
Yeah, we just need to be so careful with that. And I want to thank the mods that are in the chat today. If you can just slam those trolls right away, I really appreciate it. So thank you. So let's get to this first question. So Natalie, do you want to go first? What is the card that hooked you on the deck?
I'd be happy to go first. So the card that hooked me on the deck was the Hierophant from the first edition. It just, I found it so striking. Yeah, I almost don't know what to say about it. Do you want me to go on about it, or just, hey, it was
No,
this one?
no, it's fine. I mean, we can just kind of take a survey. Chris, how about you?
Same. It really
Really?
Yeah.
was. Do you know what it was? I was fed up seeing the blooming Pope. Do you know what I mean? I'm raised a
Mhm.
Catholic. Do you know what I mean? So but I was like, the Pope, the Pope, the Pope. Like, give me something different. I don't want religious. And then I saw this and I was like, oh, religious. Oh, that's different. Like that
Mhm.
was the religious that I didn't know I wanted until I saw it, and I was like, this is just, this is just too just. Like I love it. I absolutely love it. I know a lot of people have problem like fair enough, they don't like this card, but I love it.
Wow. Okay. So I chose a different one. I chose the Nine of Swords.
Oh.
And the reason why is that this was the first card that I was telling you how the deck kind of took me to my knees. And I had a couple of really powerful past life readings with one of my yogi high priestessy teacher people. And when I did a reading and this card came up, there was also some baby cards that came up at that time. It just kind of shook me raw, and it was just an impression. And every time this card comes up, I feel like I'm journeying to some kind of liminal space or other world that I have been. And it kind of what do you call it when a deck not haunts you, but what's that expression? You know, when a card just keeps coming up and again and again and again in different readings.
Stalker.
Stalker. That card stalked me for a
Mhm.
while. Yeah. Yeah. So there we go. I know some people responded. I know I saw Kristen responded, but the chat is so busy. I don't know what she said. Evangelina said the Magician and the Two of Discs. The Two of Discs is a really cool card. And that Magician card with that tetragrammaton in his hand is so powerful. So powerful. Yeah. Did you see? I wanted to go back to that. Did you see the first comment where it was Temple Tarot said it was justice? Okay. Okay. And then Joel has a question. So I'm just going to scroll back up. Julianne Victoria suggested the High Priestess. That is a very striking card, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Death. I think a lot of people love the Death card. It is. It's one of my favorites for sure. Okay, let's go to Joel's question before we go on to our second question. What is your take on the star card being intended to be the Hierophant? And what is the main shift in meaning for you guys? What is your take on the star card? The star card.
I think it would have made quite a cool Hierophant. It has, as much as it feels like a very feminine representation, it still has a lot of Christ vibes for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Unicurse of Star, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think it would have been quite a powerful Hierophant, but I do like it
Mm-hmm.
as the star as well.
Same. I mean, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Natalie.
I was just going to say, because her concept of it is the Whore of Babylon, which is really the city of Jerusalem. If you see, it's her walking over the top of a city of people. So So it makes sense from that perspective, but it gives you the sense of grace involved, and benevolence. It still carries that sense of benevolence. And of course, the keyword benevolence disappears entirely from the second edition guidebook for the Hierophant. So it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, when you look at that card, you can also get the sense of, you know, walking over fire. And I feel like there's a natural transformation there's something about the energy, and I know this is not intended as the energy of fire, but there's something about the coloration, the orange, and then what we see in the Phoenix in either edition. And I don't know, so that doesn't really answer Joel's question. I'm really happy where it is, Joel. As the Hierophant, I would have a harder time working with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's something too about that being a 6-pointed star at the sacral chakra. That is a whole other can of worms that I love about this card. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a little higher we can't see her physical body, but it's a really, really great card. Thank you for that question, Joel. Okay, now this one's going to take perhaps a little bit longer to answer. So my intention for this question was, could you choose one minor number, all 4 cards, and the associated major arcana, and tell us what it is about what Marie White has done with this number that you love? Who wants to go first?
I've got my card ready if you want me to go first.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
So for me, it's the 2s with the High Priestess. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, this is potentially my favourite card in the deck, the 2 of Discs. That might be what's swaying me towards the 2s a wee bit, but I just love how they all come together, and how they're all kind of I don't know, it feels as though they're all kind of telling the same story but from a different point of view, or you know, it's as though they've taken the High Priestess and, you know, split her out into, you know, the physical and everything else. There's just something about the connectedness of it, and there's just something really nice about how she's interpreted the 2s, and yeah, how she's broken off, I guess, from the norm a bit with them as well.
Yeah, how about you, Natalie? Natalie?
Sorry, I lost audio for a minute there. What, could you repeat that, Sadhana? I'm sorry.
Oh, just in response to this question, which number did you choose?
Oh, yes, I chose the 7s and the Chariot.
I knew you were going to choose that.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy of the dogs, or the metaphor really of the dogs. Whoops, that wasn't there's the dogs. You know, and it goes along with the sort of, this is for a later question, but it goes along with that overriding, an overarching symbol of black and white, yoking together 2 things, you know, bringing everything together underneath the same cloak, and being guided then by the heart, you know, having a heart so big, that it can encompass both the dark and the light, you know. I mean, it's just personal, but it looks like my dog who passed away last year. And I always could see like the darkness of my dog and his moments when he was really poorly behaved kind of represented in that card. You know, which wasn't too often, thankfully. But I also really love, in the 7 of Swords, the idea of taking responsibility for something and being willing to, you know, restore something rather than just having it be sneaking away, you know, or being shady. There's a possibility. I think I wrote down that there's a possibility of redemption and the ability to make things right. And again, we get the black and white kind of contrast there.
Yeah. And I knew you were going to choose that, so I didn't choose that number.
Oh,
I also really love the sevens. And if for those of you that have, read the guidebook multiple times, you'll know that Marie White talks about the importance of the sevens in the deck. The sevens are very central to the energy of the whole deck. And I also, there's just something about embracing and knowing that we cannot go forward as the Chariot without both our black dog and our white dog. That to really bring those together is so important. I, like Julianne Victoria, I chose the sixes. And for numerous reasons. One is I absolutely love it when a deck creator brings in the energy of the Sephiro of Tiferet, and we can really focus on the sixes as the place of beauty and harmony, and what that might mean for us in our healing journeys. And I think to have all of this healing energy at the sixes, at this central point, is really, really powerful. Now, saying that, I don't necessarily agree with the archangels she has placed in certain suits. And that's one of the questions I'm going to ask later. I think it's our second to last question, but I can work with it. And I think that there's a lot of questions that I have in this tarot that I would love to sit down and chat with Marie about. But there's just something about Archangel Uriel coming up from the depths of the ocean and being there in that place of transformation. Now, Archangel Uriel, of course, is often associated with the devil, and all of these nuances and subtleties just work so well for me. So I love it when the sixes come up in a reading, because I have so much to talk about. It's really powerful. So yeah. Did anybody else reply? I know Evangelina said the sixes as well too. I'm just going to look at the chat while I get the next question.
And so did Julianne. Julianne loves the sixes.
Okay. Let's go to the next question, which is this one. And I think this is going to be a really interesting card. And I hope that those of you in the chat have an opportunity as well. We would love to hear your responses to these questions. And for those of you that are just coming in, I did format a tag for these 9 questions. If you would like to do a video response or an Instagram response or something, I will be following the tag, and let us know your answers to these questions. So what is still the most challenging card to read, and why? Chris, how about you?
Could you come back to me, Sadhana?
Yep, I can. Natalie?
Yeah, for me, it's the Two of Swords, because I don't feel like this card holds, like the image doesn't for me hold the full meaning of the card, and somehow distracts me a little bit. And it was one of the reasons that I realized I was going to have to go back to using keywords, just like assigning every card, a keyword, and then going through it like, rote memorizing, because there were a few where I was just like, and I don't even remember what some of the other ones were. But even still, with daily practice for years, this one can still stump me in a reading. Doesn't always come across clearly.
One of the things I see in that card with the orange at the bottom is I see the solar plexus chakra. So I see the diaphragm, and then above that I see the lungs. So I see it's almost like the word. The word is rising from the fire through the lungs, but mostly in this card I just really feel the importance of well, doesn't she talk about the breath in this card?
Yes.
And
as it relates to word too.
And I know Chris might have something to say about this because he likes the twos, but there's something about the almost the visceral nature of the twos in that we're dealing with all these body parts. Like I've always seen the Two of Wands as a vagina. It looks like
Yes.
that's what it looks like, right?
Yes.
And this card we have the lungs, and in the Two of Pentacles it's about the eyes. And so there's something about the body parts of the twos that feels, I don't know, it's very cool.
Thank you, because that gives me something really specific image, within the imagery to focus on. That's really helpful.
What's the other one? What's Two of Cups?
It's the two horses. Yeah.
The horse.
Yeah, it's
Oh, right. Okay, the horses. Okay, so that one doesn't really fit. I would have to think about how to fit that into my analogy.
I think this is
she uses
supposed to be
this as the
heart.
heart.
Isn't it?
Oh, the heart. That's right, the heart. The chambers of the heart.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of cool, isn't it? The way that yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chris, what's your challenging card?
Mine's is the Eight of Discs. I just find it really hard to reconcile with everything that I understand about the Eight of Discs. Whether I think of my good old Smith way, which is where I began, or whether I go to my numerology, which is still kind of in a similar vein, for me, the Eight of Discs, it's about like perfecting. It's like you've gained so much momentum, you've created a stable base for yourself, such that your endeavors they almost work themselves. Do you know what I mean? And that to me is what you see that wee guy doing when he's carving his pentacles. He's become so good at it. He's become such a master at it that he's his business is running itself, or however you want to interpret it. And how you can reconcile that as a lamb between two what's the word for them? They're like lions, but they're like angels, aren't they? What's the word? It's not.
Yeah, it's the seat of mercy. Something to do with the ark.
Yeah, there's the two lions though. What they're what's the word? They're not
Seraphim.
Yeah, I think seraphim. So I just don't get how that links in, and something that's quite interesting about the eights in general, actually, is although like through a lot of the deck, you can see how she links, like you said, the sevens to the chariot, the sixes to the lovers, for me, the twos to the high priestess. The eights, I mean, by her numerology, it should be justice, but I find a lot, like two in particular of the eights, link more in with the strength card. And it's like, did you start off with strength at 8 and then change it at the last minute or something? And that, spoilers. That's maybe one of my questions that I would ask her. But yeah, so sorry. Yeah, that's my card that I struggle with anyway.
It's a difficult card for me as well too. I pulled up 4. And I pulled up 4 because I didn't know which ones you were. So I don't know. I've got 4 here. I'm just going to go. I got 3 to choose from. I'm going to pull out the 5 of Cups. And I'll tell you why this is difficult for me to read. I really love the 3 of Cups. I totally understand it. I dig that 3 of Cups. It's awesome. Like no problem reading it. And then I just don't understand why the unicorn is then covering the well. It just doesn't, I don't know, this card, like there's this beautiful sequence of energy, and I have a really hard time with this card. Yeah.
I've understood it, Sadhana, to be the wounded healer. Is it Chiron? And that's how I can really dig with that card, is the Five of Cups, because the wounded healer takes wounds into themselves, and I almost look at it as a bit of, what's that film where that guy does that? Is it The Green Mile or something? But they take the wound into themselves and heal other people. That's what I see when I look at that card. I'm probably way off with it, and I've probably not understood it correctly, but that's what I see. And so you're getting this idea of someone being wounded. You're getting the idea of pain, of suffering. But to me, that card opens it out to something. It gives it a little something extra. It's the idea of you're doing it with purpose. You're doing it for a reason. You're doing it to help other people. And if that comes up in a reading, my question to you or to whoever else is, well, you're putting yourself in this position. Is there a way that you're taking on too much? Could you stop taking on other people's burdens because they're becoming too much on you? Do you know what I mean? That's how I deal with that card, if that helps.
Yeah. So you see the waters, or the pain of the waters, or whatever the water represents for the querent is being absorbed into the unicorn in some way.
I
Does
don't
the
know if
unicorn represent Chiron?
I think so. That's the way that I see it. Yeah.
So the other thing with the fives all being in the Garden of Eden is a whole other layer that do you bring that in? Do you talk about the five of Eve and Adam? And I mean, because we have the two trees on either side of the waterfall here.
Yep.
Is this a microcosm of the Three of Cups? Is this one of the three waterfalls?
Wow, I'd never thought of it that way. Huh.
So I feel like I want to do more work with that card,
Tammy Pie in the comments remarked that she views it as a sin eater.
I did see that.
I totally can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the work with this deck is ongoing.
Yeah. Yes.
There's no end to my personal reflections with many of the cards. Yeah. Okay. Most powerful recurring symbol is an easy one for me. There's a bunch. Was this easy for you guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Natalie, on you go.
Okay. I like the black and white and the black and white pillars specifically, because usually when she mentions some kind of black and white in there, the pillars get thrown in. But it was her using the black and white pillars as a way of helping to frame and understand the way in which she's integrated Hermeticism and Kabbalah into the deck is what made it accessible for me, so that it was almost like when I went to go and study that more in depth in order, again, to understand the deck even better. It was really very immediate, and it was very, it makes great sense. I love it.
It is.
And as a Tibetan practitioner too, that idea, there's so many places in the deck where it's not about choosing one or the other. It's literally the middle path where both are embraced. It's not necessarily about, divorcing one from the other, but about integrating both and allowing both. And I really love that.
Maybe that's one of the reasons why the Three of Cups feels also so powerful to me, is that we have all three pillars here as well too. This is, on a very mundane level, we can talk about three paths, but we have that symbol even in cards where we don't see a black pillar and a white pillar, right?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it is the symbol of fire, And I was going to say it's the wild cats, but I absolutely love how fire is personified in this deck.
Mm.
And one of the questions isn't what's your favorite card, but the personification of fire is, to me, and maybe it's because I have always been challenged by this element and at the same time deeply connect with it. It just really inspires me. And the fact that fire doesn't have to be a lion, it doesn't have to be a tiger. There's just something about that. And so I think it's one of the reasons that I don't know, like I feel so inspired by this deck. That the fire inspires me, regardless of whether it's in the suit of wands or elsewhere in the deck. Yeah. Chris?
I was actually going to say the two towers as well, the black and white towers are, just for me, it really pulls on the opposite poles. The two extremes between between which lie all things. All extreme, well, what am I trying to say? All kind of all opposites, and the spectra that they create. That's what I mentioned that a lot, and when I was talking about the twos last night. Because you've got like the two trees which represent the two pillars or the torches at the two pillars, and you, like Natalie says, you've got the towers. They show up throughout the deck. And yeah, sometimes like they talk about that sometimes seen, sometimes unseen grey pillar in between. And I think that's where she's going with a lot of the deck.
So many cards have the pillars.
Yeah.
No, the pillars
all the way through.
The pillars are here. The pillars are in this card, right? The pillars they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really powerful.
Cool. The green eyes, yes. Hannah, I totally agree with you. The green eyes are amazing. And that to do a reading, if you have like a 6 card or something and you see those green eyes, they're a lovely path to follow. And I think the power of repeating symbols is a strength of this deck, because it allows us to weave story so much more deeply when we can follow those recurring symbols throughout a reading. Yeah. Okay, question number 5. Choose one card. I didn't give you guys this one. This was something I added. So this is on the fly. If you can answer it, choose one card from the 2nd edition and tell us why it works better for you. I'll go first. I'm going to say none.
Cheating at your own question.
Cheating at my own question. But if I had to pick one, oh gosh,
it's hard.
It's really hard. And the reason I asked this question was because I wanted to give a voice to people who like the 4 new cards, because I know there's a lot of people that appreciate the 4 new cards. I'm not one of them. Maybe yeah. Okay, maybe the High Priestess. I don't know. Maybe the High Priestess. I'm really happy that she didn't lose the pregnant belly. So even though this is not obviously a pregnant belly like we see in the 1st edition, we still have the illusion of something large underneath the veil. I like that she brought in the pomegranates. That's a nice little touch. The way that the robe appears as a waterfall, I think, is also beautifully illustrated. So there's something there. And the fact that we don't see a face and we are just walking into the abyss with the high priestess is pretty beautiful. So
Mhm.
if I had to pick one, maybe that would be the card. Tammy Pie is stumped. Yeah. Can either of you respond?
I'm going to say the Hierophant.
Why?
Well, that's a very good question because I love this one so deeply. I mean, so in love with this Hierophant. And this one allows for more mundane interpretations. So I've actually found that when I do readings where I'm really just answering really mundane questions for people, is he going to, are we ever going to get married? Is he the one? Yada, yada, those kinds of things, or, relationship readings where the people are not necessarily there because they're on a deep spiritual path, but because they really just want some very clear answers. Using the second edition, this Hierophant will come out with very clear readings. If it's a love reading and the Hierophant pops out right side up, marriage, pretty much always. If she pops up upside down, not now, not yet. It's not time yet. But it's made that much, I don't know. It shocked me initially when it started reading that way. That said, when people come for readings that are more in depth, I will come back to the first edition, because if they're wanting to path work and they want to look at their own spiritual path and growth, this is the Hierophant that is necessary for that journey. But and really the first edition generally. But yeah, I've gotten a lot more than I would ever have expected out of this Hierophant, despite hating it initially.
Okay, so Julianne Victoria says 3 of Swords. And then Donna Thompson, also the 3 of Swords has such a rose glow and aura to it. Okay, Chris, what's your take on this question?
I wouldn't say that any of the second edition changes work better than any of their first edition counterparts. I'd picked up the Hierophant too. Actually, it's funny because when you look at the guidebook, compare the guidebook entries for both of these cards, it's clear that she interprets both of them in what I think is quite a negative way. She's doing the same, that she's trying to convey the same message, and to me, this visually depicts it a lot better. If I was just going by what I think, but looking at these cards, I would say that the second edition is more of a lighter, a more upright, a more positive depiction, and this is more of a negative depiction of the archetype of the Hierophant. To me, this looks as though these. I know that they're snakes and they're coming up, and actually what they're doing is strangling her. But I don't think you necessarily have to see it that way. This looks like the caduceus to me. It looks to me like she's nurturing the caduceus. That it's rising up, it's gaining wings at the top. This could potentially be a really positive image, and that is one of the positive kind of messages that the Hierophant can convey. Like passing on tradition, passing on knowledge, how it can kind of nurture people and bring them up, give them that boost that they need. But then it can also do this, where you're almost, that's to me, these things that are feeding off her are being corrupted by what they're being fed, which is something that we as New Age people probably understand quite well about maybe traditional religion and how how it perhaps has its set views, and if you don't fit into that box, then you know, it can be quite corrupt. Do you know what I mean? So I think this is
Mhm.
really powerful. So I don't say that that works better, but I do think that they're both pretty valid and pretty cool cards, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that the shape of the cards has changed, so you can't substitute the cards that you like in the version that you have, you know?
Yeah.
You have to
Nope.
use one edition or the other edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Okay, so
Although,
the
see, when you trim, I've trimmed my first edition, and it's not a perfect fit, but the size is comparable. It's almost the same. But the cardstock's totally different, so there's no way I could have that.
Mhm.
Um,
So did you trim your first edition a little bit shorter?
I just took it down to just the images.
Ah, okay. Right, because it's not quite the same size. Okay, so our next question is this. Now, for those of you that don't have both guidebooks, for the most part, except for a couple of the new cards, the extensive description is identical in both guidebooks. What
Mhm.
changes is the keywords, and they change tremendously from edition 1 to edition 2. So if you don't have both editions, you're missing out, because there's definitely a shift of energy. And have you had time to think about this question, Natalie or Chris?
I actually spent a couple of hours yesterday going back through both of the guidebooks, and like marking them up a little bit and making additional notes. The changes of the keywords. I mean, I marked some of them here with the kind of gray colored tabs, where it almost, if you're just going by the keywords, it almost completely changes the meaning of the card. The different keywords. And so I made like 2 pages of notes like about that, because I was so because it was a snow day and I was just really nerding out. But what essentially what she seems to have done is made kept the main meanings, and then changed the keywords so that they really fit into what the average reader is going to know, which is the RWS. It makes it immediately accessible, because if you look at some of the keywords that she's got, in the first edition, let's see, some of them you can see that she's really incorporating a meaning that is more appropriate for Tarot de Marseille, right? And in other ones, it's really very much a Thoth meaning. In other ones, still, it's just her meaning. It kind of goes away from any other ideas. It's just hers. And what she's done in some cases kind of dumbs it down, but it generally makes it a lot more accessible for someone who's just desperate to pick up the deck and read with it, and has the foundation of RWS.
I'm so glad you said that you felt that she dumbs it down in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So instead of the keywords being a summary of the deep, rich language of the longer description, it's almost like there's no connection anymore.
Right.
And I think that's unfortunate.
I do too.
Yeah. Chris, have you given this any thought?
So I need to be honest here. I've obviously got both guidebooks, but I had real trouble with the first edition guidebook. It's part of the reason why I didn't work with the deck for so long. The keyword section, the big, the where she describes, I, it's hard enough, because I feel as though there's chunks missing. And I know my understanding is that it would have been a book about this size, and she had to cut a lot of it out. And I think that really shows through. Um, so that was difficult enough to deal with. But then in the keyword section, you were literally getting keywords thrown at you, like these random keywords, and it was like, I just felt like, where is this coming from? What's going on? So actually when the second edition came out, and it just felt a bit easier to read. So I mainly rely on my second edition book for that section. So I'm one of the people that needs that dumbed down. I'm not going to be able to do this question much justice, to be honest.
No, but I think it's great that we discuss this because a lot of people don't have both editions.
Mm-hmm.
And so the gift of the second edition is that I think she's making the deck more accessible. Not only with a couple of new cards that are dramatically shifted, but also now I'm sure you've all listened to her interview with Kasha on Tarot Map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she talks about the second edition and how the second edition reflects her personal shift and working with the deck for so many years. And so that I expect that it's not necessarily a dummying down, but her seeing. So one of the things I've always found really interesting about looking at artwork, like strong arty decks, is that I believe regardless of whether what is painted, what appears in the painting is conscious or unconscious, there's some accessible information out there that we might even see that the artist doesn't see themselves. And what she was painting way back in, say, 2010 or 2007 or 2006, whenever she started these paintings, was something much deeper and richer than even she was aware of. And until the cards were actually produced and printed and she had them in hand and she started working with them, was she able to see the full potential of every single card. And I really feel that Chris touched on this, that in the taking the massive volume of the guidebook from this to this, we lost a lot. We lost a lot. So yeah, I thought this is just an important point to address for a couple of reasons. Donna Thompson. An easier guidebook. Yeah. First edition was intimidating for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm all for accessibility. I kind of almost wish that there had been, someone else mentioned it here in the comments as well, like having a third edition where you get all of the cards. I would say too that in that third edition, I'd love to see her original keywords and then the second edition keywords. Maybe, relabeling it or labeling it a little bit more honestly, because honestly, what I'm seeing is I don't know if I'm the only one. I mean, I need to do a more in-depth examination of it, but I feel like they're really very targeted to RWS meanings, and sometimes the meanings, the way that she's done them in the second edition, she's changed the meaning from upright to reversed, where, something that was an upright meaning in the first edition becomes a reverse meaning in the second and vice versa, which is really, once I was looking at it objectively, I found it really kind of shocking. It almost, like I said, it in some cases, it really does change the meanings, it's
It does. And the 8 of Swords is a card that I really like. It reminds me of a card in the Osho Zen Tarot. I think it's one of I forget which card it is. And the 8 of Swords, we have this gateway. And again, we have the 2 pillars, another card with the 2 pillars. And if you look through to the potential gateway that is in that tower in the distance, the art has so much to offer. And she this just like in the second edition, the first one is being incarcerated in mental prisons, and I don't see that at all. And that is just that's appealing to the 8 of Swords RWS. And I see this Eight of Swords illustration as one of so much potential freedom. I see this as a forward moving card, not a card of being closed in. So I strongly recommend for anybody that wants to deeply explore this deck to take some time to borrow. I have done a spreadsheet comparing all the first and second edition keywords. And that exercise was really good for me. So
Same.
Okay, so the next one is Evangelina, this Four of Swords. So it'll be interesting. Let's if any of you choose this card. Okay, disappointing card that doesn't quite measure up to the depth of the other cards. I don't like going all Debbie Downer, so this is really our only, negative question. Who wants to give this one a go?
I can go first if you want.
Sure, Chris.
Go for it, Chris.
I suppose the caveat or the disclaimer here is that I say this about a lot of decks that have this card. It's the Solabusca Three of Swords, the Three Swords through the heart. It was maybe more disappointing in this deck because she had this first, this beautiful, I'm like, at first you look at it and you think, right, you've still got three swords kind of going towards its heart, and then you think, hang on, no, it's blocked off. The dove, it could be a symbol of, it's a bird that could be a symbol of like language, understanding, words, intellect, that kind of a thing, and that's being blocked off. It could the dove could be a symbol of like God, of spirit. You're being blocked off from spirit by the intellect, by the limitations of the intellect, and that's kind of the path that that's where she's going with the swords. Amazing, I love it. Like there's even spaces in the clouds if you like so much you can do with this card. And then she changed it. Now don't get me wrong, I love that it's it's an anatomical heart. I love that it's got roses. It's a stunning piece of art, but I just think, why would you forgo this for the three swords through the heart? I don't know. And I'm someone who, for the Three of Swords, I don't always like to read it as heartbreak. In fact, I very rarely like to read it as heartbreak because three is a number of growth, of expansion, of physical creation. Swords are about the intellect. So it's a card about learning. Yeah, sometimes you can learn things and they're painful. I get that. But I'm just no. Bring back the original, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
I like that too, because I hadn't thought about it that way either, but I always loved this Three of Swords because of that. Yeah, I mean, also the idea that if you don't put down the things that are wounding you, right? Even if you've managed to catch them in midair, if that bird doesn't put those swords down, they will drag it to the ground. So letting go of what you don't need, or letting go of pain in order to, be able to transcend it, that's all there. But I mean, with the roses on the heart in the new Three of Swords, that's also kind of there as well, to some degree. But I agree with you; it's not at the same level of depth that it was in the first edition.
Well, and we also have this opportunity to kind of liaise between the Three and Four of Swords, with the potential for, again, we can go to toxins and toxicity, and there's just so much potential, and we lose that connection with the new Three of Swords. There's a disconnect now, whereas there was kind of a story that was building here. So yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie,
Looking at the two of those.
Yeah.
Did you go, Natalie? No, I didn't. Sorry. Okay. It's for me, it's where did she go? Where did it go? For me, what a shock. It's also going to be the second edition Hierophant. I just have so many mixed feelings about it. It just doesn't measure up to the depth for me. It just I don't know. It helped me to hear, Chris, how you view this second edition Hierophant, about, her, like, having her kind of nurture the caduceus into being. That helped, because I really felt like replacing the babies with the snakes, and I just thought it felt initially to me like a cop out, because the imagery of those babies, as horrible as they look and disgusting and unlovable as they might seem, and as disgusting and pale and washed out and awful looking as that female Hierophant is, who I've lost track of, it's there's something about that to me that's the depth is just remarkable. Because yes, it could be, suckling on something that's horrible and creating corruption. It could also be, if she were not there, those babies would starve and die. So finding the way to love the unlovable and corrupt it simultaneously. There's so many ways in which that plays out in society. We see it all the time. That double-edged sword, no pun intended, but that's just how things work. The good and the bad are not ever separate. They go together. We just like to see one over the other. But I feel like we missed that in this one.
Yeah, I know. I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
She offered so much there.
Yeah.
So
and
much.
I'm sorry, no matter what she says, the snakes are not the same as the suckling babies. They're just not.
No.
Even though she says it in the guidebook, that doesn't make it so.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go out on a crazy wild limb here. Okay. I'm going to say the Empress. This Emperor card is so powerful. What we have here is wisdom. And we have an impeccable strength that is embodied in a softness. We have so much in this card. And I just feel that this card doesn't measure up to the Emperor. I want so much more in this card. I feel like she gave us, oh my God, like what she gave us in the Queens is incredible. And I feel like the Empress was created very early on in the journey. I don't know if we have documentation on the dates of when the paintings were created, but I just feel it falls flat in comparison to the Queens and the Emperor as her counterpart. So that's yeah, in my humble opinion.
That one was on my list too.
Okay.
I've always felt she was comparatively shallow.
Chris, you're smiling.
No, I'm just listening.
Okay.
I do quite like the card, so I do. But
this is a loaded question. I just want to go back to Deb's comment up here. At the time that Marie was doing this deck, she was nursing twins. And so her mind, her energy, her body was consumed with young motherhood.
Mhm.
And to paint that Hierophant, I think, is really a powerful reflection on the, the discussion of breastfeeding in general. And if you weren't aware of that, I think that adds an interesting layer. So, yeah. Tabby Pie loves the Empress. Okay, and I'm glad. It's good to have this discussion, right? Julianne finds the simplicity powerful. Okay, that's why we're having this discussion, right? Share, 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 share. What would you like to ask Marie White? I would like to ask Marie White. I'd like to ask her questions about the archangels that were chosen for the sixes. Because I've always seen Archangel Raphael, I would put Archangel Raphael as a healer, probably with the cups. And because I've done a lot of work with the archangels, and so I would love to have a discussion about her choice of archangels. While she makes a lovely argument for Archangel Gabriel as the angel for the pentacles, for the discs, even in her language and her description, it feels very much like Archangel Gabriel would be a perfect archangel for the suit of swords.
Yes.
So I would love to have a discussion with her about that. Yeah.
Also, Uriel, isn't it Uriel in the sixes who's got the lobster claws?
Yes. And so, yeah.
I mean, Uriel's associated with fire.
Right. And we have Archangel Michael, who is often a guardian of children as well, too.
Right.
So a lot of these could be swapped around.
Yes.
And I think in part of working with this deck, and, I have another question if you guys don't ask, and I've got to remember it. I'm going to wrap a little string around my finger here. Instead of fighting with the deck, let's just work with it the way it is. And I think that's the case with a lot of decks. The reason the reason one ditches a deck is because we struggle. Instead of working with it, we struggle against it. Chris, you alluded to your question earlier.
That's a potential question. The actual question I think I would ask, because I'm quite nosy and I find this kind of a thing quite interesting. So, as much as I preferred the first edition cards, I think it's interesting to see when she, how she changes the cards and brings new cards in. And I recently discovered things like the old Star card and the old Magician card, and from how she brought out, like, I don't know if you know, she brought out a Majors Only plus the Aces edition before the first edition came out, when she was still making the rest of the deck. And a lot, a few of the cards were different, and that was where what's now the Star was the Hierophant. And I find that really interesting to go digging through the recesses of the internet and find that stuff.
Yeah.
What I would ask is, right now, like when you went from, what was it, whenever you made the first edition to 2019, when you published the second edition, you've changed those 4 cards. If you were to do a third edition now, what cards would you change? What would you change them to? Like, that's what I think I would ask. Like, is this the final perfected edition, or is there more that you would tweak, more changes you would make? That's what I would ask.
Okay, let's go to Evangelina's comment. This is the card, right? Oh, no, that's the 9.
No, it's the 9.
That's the 9. That's the 9. The 10 of discs is it's the release from the labyrinth, right? So in the Ace of discs, we have the Minotaur locked and lost in the labyrinth. And then in the 10 of discs, the Minotaur is free. I agree. This is a challenging card to read. I can't find it quickly. Where is it? When you got it there?
Oh, wrong one.
It's, again, we have a lamb, right? Do we have a lamb or no? We have the Minotaur on the... I don't know where it is. Oh, you've got it. Okay, great. Thank you, Natalie. Oh, can't really see it with the focus, but I know the card. So the question is this: where are located the 3 pentacles from the upper side of the tree? Maybe I'm not familiar.
Oh,
The 3 like heavenly Sephira. Is that what was missing?
yep. So like, yeah, this person wants to know, where are these 3 at the top? Because essentially what we've got in that card is just the bottom. Yeah.
Yes,
So the top 3 are gone.
I had that question in an old journal as well too. You know, and I wonder, so here's a really practical thing. I'm doing a deep dive right now with Jeremy Hush's tarot. And so part of my research is to go back and look at the original paintings. And I'm wondering if in the card design, there was some cropping.
Oh.
Or is it possible that they're just there in, you know, in the ether?
That could be. I mean, that's very reasonable to, I mean, because the first 3 are not material yet.
Mhm.
So having them be implied through the blue in the sky, which matches the color of the Sephiro, you know, that are extant, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can tell there's been cropping in a lot of these cards.
Yeah.
But I think that what you just said, Natalie, is really important, because those first 3 Sephiro are not embodied.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay. Before we get to you, Natalie, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
And Julianne Victoria says the lamb is holding 1, and the curls of the antlers could be the other 2. So funny. I can't even see the card on my table. Anyway, this is a great question. Thank you for the question. I totally forgot about this. I did have notes on this some time ago. And yeah, about a bazillion questions we could ask Maria White. What is your question, Miss Natalie?
You know, I really couldn't think of one because there are so many. I hardly know where to start. I really struggle with that. I think of a million questions, and then the minute that I'm on the spot and I have a chance to ask, float them out there, they tend to go out of my mind. And I just wouldn't. I guess I'd want to know more about her choice, you know, in her process with the Hierophant. I'm always curious about that. I know I had a dozen questions that came up when I was preparing the video for the 10s and couldn't find anything in my notes. They probably ran through my head and I didn't write them down. But yeah, knowing more about the shifts that she made, you know, I still just don't feel like, even though she answered it sort of, you know, in her interview with
Kasha.
With Kasha, I still don't feel I feel like because she kind of skimmed past it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, I wanted to pick her brain even further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want you to know that I have emailed her 5 times inviting her to chat.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that she sees this.
Yeah.
I sent her the StreamYard link and I sent her an invitation to this as well too, just to be in the chat. So maybe, you know, there comes a point where one is tired about being interviewed about this,
Yeah.
about one's work, you know, and just to let it be. So I totally understand that as
Mhm.
well too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And our last question for today, I think is a really great, it's a good question. It's a good question. So I invite you all to respond in whatever way feels right. Those of you that are in the chat. Chris, how about you?
I think the, the the sheer expanse of knowledge that is packed into this deck, you know, she grabs from everywhere, you know, it's not just based on Norse mythology or Greek mythology or Christian, can't really say Christian mythology, can you? But you know what I mean, like Christian religion. It's not from one, you know, there's bits of everything, and
Mhm.
you like clearly get an understanding that Marie White knows so much and has a lot of understanding about a lot of different things. Um, and when you study this deck, you've kind of you're thrown into that to those all of those deep ends. Do you know what I mean? And you take in so much, you soak in so much knowledge. You know, even if you just dip your toe in, I feel as though you take in so much, and not only the amount of knowledge, but the just the macrocosmic, you know, the direction that this deck goes in. You know, for me, it's a deck that I pull out if I'm wanting to do readings on like kind of a self-awareness and how to be better in myself, you know, like a kind of a
Mhm.
self-improvement type deck. It's one for cutting right deep. Um, so and you know, so it kind of opens up different cards and different decks. Like I was saying about that Five of Cups card and how I read that. You know, it's you know, no, it's no longer just a card about being wounded or being sad or bereaved or upset or you know it brings in this extra layer of you're perhaps taking on the pain of others. You know, you're taking it away from others, and you've got that extra dynamic to it. That's something that I can then read from. You know, when the Five of Cups perhaps comes up in another deck, that might pop into my head
Mhm.
because obviously I've got it there. So yeah, there's so much that this I feel as though it definitely makes me a much better reader. Just learning to read with this deck.
Hmm. How about you, Natalie?
You know, I think it's completely changed and improved the way that I understand uh, so many things. It's um, hard to know where to start. I mean, the thing that attracted me to the deck in the first place was I felt that her cards really, her imagery, her the way her entire approach, at least to the first edition, really spoke to me about providing more of like a Western framework for the process of initiation and awakening um, that took place, you know, for me, largely within a Buddhist and an Eastern context. And so it kind of rooted and grounded that in a different language for me that felt more comfortable, more accessible, and which really reflected the depth of what that experience, you know, up to that point had been like. Um, you know, I could see myself in the cards. I could see my own journey in the cards. And I could see the potential for furthering that journey and having a framework for it and an understanding for it within the deck. But after, you know, a longer period of deep diving with it, I also feel like I could suddenly understand and read with the Thoth deck. It was, so many of the concepts there just suddenly were unpacked. So when I began really studying Thoth, it was like, oh, well, this is all this is all here. Or I recently got the oh shoot, I'm gonna forget the name of it. The Rotamundi. And looking at the Rotamundi tarot was immediately like, oh my gosh, so much of this is packed into Marie White's deck. It's in the Marielle. I'm right now on a deep dive looking at Robert M. Place's decks, which I haven't even talked about publicly at all yet. But they're based on Hermetic alchemy and spiritual alchemy. And that's in here. So those concepts were already really easy to start wrapping my mind around, because the imagery seems to almost plant seeds, and in ways that I would never have anticipated. There were things I felt like I could understand about Hermetic Kabbalah just from having worked deeply with this deck, which are, applicable to any other deck that's rooted in lodge magic, or even in the French tradition of Atea. I mean, she's drawing all of those things together. It also, my first deck that I ever read with was Tarot de Marseille, and so I found too that I'm able to read, when I'm doing quick readings, which sounds really antithetical, but it does work. You can you can totally do it. And you can read it very much the way you would with a Marseille. You can read it directionally and so forth. So it feels like it's all packed in there in a way that's, if you study this one deeply, you can study any more deeply and learn much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so worth the deep dive.
Yeah.
It's so worth the deep dive. Yeah.
Yeah.
The respect for the historical and mythological connections have, what I want to say, like, then there is, and Natalie, there is Eastern philosophy in this deck as well too.
Absolutely.
And to see and here we see in this young page that possibly the descent of the Kundalini coming down through the spine. And, much like, and I don't want to compare this to RWS, but I've been reading recently some of the older books written by Crowley, and some of the poetry and the Book of Lies and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And these grand masters knew all about Eastern philosophy. It's just not discussed in the way that the Western mythology and thank you for that tummy pie. Abrahamic myths are at the forefront of the Thoth and the RWS. And so what we're seeing here is something, I think, so much greater than anyone can possibly digest.
Mm-hmm.
She has this deck is such a gift. And like Donna said, thank you, Marie White, if you are watching this, for birthing this truly epic deck into the world.
Yeah.
For your patience with all of us as we constantly dissect and analyze it. Because yes, can you imagine how annoying it is for all these people to be constantly contacting her and asking her these questions? But yeah, if you do research, there are lots of articles out there to answer some of the questions that we have asked. Evangelina says this deck is a portal, and I totally agree with that. It is a portal in so many ways. It's a great deck for path working, which we haven't even talked about. It can really take you into other worlds and other places and spaces. Is this a deck, Chris and Natalie, that you can do mundane readings with?
I suppose it depends what what you would deem a mundane reading, but yeah, in my study group, like we do readings with it. Part of the process is we kind of so do any of you read with Lenormand? You know, in Lenormand, where you go through and you find the cards that you know, your significator card or your topic card, and then take the cards on either side, that kind of thing. So we do that with the cards that we're studying. So like we did the twos this month. So we do 4 readings, one for each of the twos, and we do that process. And you know, we had quite last night. I'm trying to remember some of the questions we had, but it was just things like one person said I'm looking at moving back home where I'm from, back to Florida. You know, what kind of an insight do you have for that? So that was one such reading that we did, and we got a pretty good reading out of it. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, I think that it can be.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to say we've exhausted this, but I think we have at least put some food for thought out there. And if anybody would like to do a VR to these 9 questions, I would love to hear your responses. And Chris, I want to thank you so much for staying up so late despite your sore throat and all that you're.
No, not at all. I wouldn't have missed it. It's been amazing to meet you both, I suppose. Although we've spoke before, Sadhana, but I don't think we've met face to face. And Natalie, it's the first time that we've properly met, so it really has been amazing. And I've followed both your channels for a long time, and Natalie in particular, your early videos that you made on this deck are, I think I already said this to you, part of the thing that inspired me to do the study group. So you know, you are a true inspiration, and it's been amazing to get to know you. I'm proper fangirling here, but
That's cool. I haven't had anyone fangirl me before. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Natalie. It's just so wonderful to see your face and talk with you.
Likewise, I feel the same about both of you as well. This has just been an absolute delight.
Yeah, it's great. So we are going to sign off, and I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend and take good care of yourselves. And we will see you all very soon. Blessings, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.